Hey everybody, and today we are talking about Hey everybody, it's Mrs. Sullivan, and today we are talking about calculating the time of death using Algor Mortis. So Algor Mortis, if you all remember, is the cooling of the body after death. So remember, let me change this pen. And if you remember from our notes in our last unit, we did talk about there's a predictable pattern in the rate that the body cools after death. It can be influenced by some different factors, which we're going to study more, and you're going to continue with your investigation of that. But we are going to just do those calculations for if someone has passed in the last 12 hours or if it's been more than 12 hours, but not quite to that 24-hour mark, because after that point, we would assume that the body has become the same temperature as the environment and it wouldn't be as accurate. So we need to kind of get some background information and figure out how we are going to solve this stuff together. I am going to give you all a cheat sheet to use that has some of these foundation ideas in it, but it is a good idea to take notes as you're watching to make sure that you understand how we got that information, and that would help you use it better. Okay, so the first step that we need to do is we need to figure out what the temperature loss was for someone who has been dead for 12 hours. And so this is going to be very useful for us to determine if they've been dead for less than 12 hours or more than 12 hours, so we know how to do our calculation. So if we remember what the rate is. So for the first 12 hours, the body loses 0.78 degrees Celsius per hour. That is how much it is cooling every hour. And then after the first 12 hours, it's going to cool at a slightly slower rate. It's only going to cool about 0.39 degrees Celsius per hour. But right now, we only want to know this first 12 hours mark. So if we're looking for the temperature lost, it would be 0.78 degrees Celsius per hour. And it's going to be times the number of hours. So if you took chemistry class, you remember the whole picket fences things where we're getting rid of units. But just know that since it's Celsius per hour, if we multiply it by a number of hours, like 12 hours, we would be able to find out how many degrees were lost. And in this case, if you put that in a calculator, you're going to get 9.36 degrees Celsius. So this is going to be a magic number that we are going to compare every change to see if they've been dead less than 12 hours or more than 12 hours. All right, so if we want to calculate the time of death if they've been less for 12 hours, so we know that they have lost less than 9.36. So we need to check first and see if the amount of temperature lost is less than 9.36 degrees Celsius. If they have lost more than 9.36 degrees Celsius, then they would have been dead for more than 12 hours, and we have to calculate that differently. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to compare the normal body temperature, which is 37 degrees Celsius. So we take 37 degrees Celsius, and then this body was found at a temperature of 32.2 degrees Celsius. So if I subtract what the body was when it was found from what it would be normally, we're going to find out that the body has cooled 4.8 degrees Celsius since death. All right. So just for comparison's sake, so we're going to say 4.8 degrees Celsius is less than 9.36 degrees Celsius. So this is a less than 12 hours problem. All right. So we want to know, how long did it take to lose that 4.8 degrees Celsius? So what we're going to do is we're going to set up our equation. So we know that our rate was 0.78 degrees Celsius per hour. If we multiply that by some number of hours since death, we would get the degrees lost. So we know the degrees lost was 4.8 degrees Celsius, and we know the rate was 0.78 degrees Celsius per hour, but what we don't know is the number of hours. So what we can do is we can divide both sides by the 0.78. So I'm going to divide by 0.78 degrees Celsius per hour here. And I'm going to divide by 0.78 degrees Celsius per hour here. So these go away. And instead, what I will get is that 4.8 divided by 0.78 equals 6.1. And so I know, because my little Celsiuses are going to go away here, that this is the hours. So the number of hours since death is 6.1 hours. So if you wanted to convert 0.1 hour is going to be 6 minutes. So it would be 6 hours and 6 minutes, but I'm okay with decimals. You don't have to do any of that conversion. But so this is how you would solve a less than 12 hours problem. And so we are going to be checking every time you have a body temperature given, you're going to compare it to this 9.36 to see if it was more than or less than 12 hours. On our little cheat sheet, I'm going to give you an example of how to solve both of these so that you always have something to reference when you're setting up your problems. So this was our answer right here. Okay. So again, knowing is the time of death more than 12 hours or less than 12 hours, we must compare to that 9.36 degrees Celsius, because this is how much is lost after 12 hours. So if it is less than 9.36 degrees Celsius, that means it was less than 12 hours ago. And if it's more than 9.36, that means it was more than 12 hours ago. All right, so let's look at a problem where someone was dead for more than 12 hours. So this one gets a little bit more complicated because the body is still going to cool at that 0.78 degrees Celsius per hour if it was during the first 12 hours. And then it's going to cool at that slower rate for any additional hour after that. So our first step is we need to figure out how much temperature was lost. So the temperature lost, we're going to have the original body temperature. So 37 degrees is when you're alive and healthy. We're going to subtract the temperature of the body when it was found. And what we're going to get is 14.8 degrees Celsius is lost. So we're going to compare that to our 9.36. So 9.36 degrees Celsius is going to be less than 14.8 degrees Celsius. So this means it was more than 12 hours ago. All right. So if it was more than 12 hours ago, what we're going to try and figure out is how much of the temperature was lost after the first 12 hours. So we know the first 12 hours you lose 9.36 degrees Celsius. So I'm going to take my total temperature lost and I'm going to subtract the amount that the body cooled during those first 12 hours because we know it was 9.36. And so the difference is that there was 5.44 degrees Celsius lost after the first 12 hours. And this is what we need to use to calculate with the new rate. So after the first 12 hours, the rate of cooling is going to be 0.39 degrees Celsius per hour. And so what that means is the body is now cooling slower for every hour after those first 12 hours. So we're going to take this rate times the number of hours after the first 12 hours, and it's going to equal our temperature lost again. So this time, our temperature lost after the first 12 hours is 5.44 degrees Celsius. So I'm going to divide both sides by my rate, just like we did before, but this time we're using the 0.39. So if I divide this one over here, those cancel, my little Celsius cancels, and what I end up getting is 5.44 divided by 0.39 is going to be 14.8 hours. Now, this is not your final answer, okay? It's not your final answer because we have to add the time from the first 12 hours. So we're going to add the first 12 hours back in, and what we're going to get as our final answer is we're going to have 26.8 hours ago is when this person died. And the reason that it's a bigger number is we already took out that 9.36 for the first 12 hours. So we have to put those 12 hours back in. So your answer would be 26.8 hours ago. So again, I'm going to give you a cheat sheet with an example of how to calculate it for when it's less than 12 hours, how to calculate it when it's more than 12 hours, and some reminders on finding like how much temperature is lost in those first 12 hours. Today's assignment, you are going to be working on calculating for some different scenarios. Like we'll give you a body temperature and you're going to estimate how long that person has been dead. And you're going to show your work. So make sure that you are showing your calculations so that I can help you see if anything's going wrong and so that I know that you were able to set it up correctly. So please let me know if you have any questions. Rewatch this video if you need to. I have more examples that we can go over as a class if you're in person, and if you're one of my remote students, we can go over this more together on a Google Meet on Wednesday. Or you can send me a message and we'll set up another time. So I hope you have a great rest of your day and I will see you soon.